On a quiet night, outside the laboratory window, there was nothing but an eerie darkness, with only the occasional breeze passing by, carrying a hint of chill. On my experiment table, bottles and jars flickered with strange light, the colors of chemical solutions subtly changing as I mixed them, almost as if responding to the passion and desire within me. Numbers, molecules, chemical reactions, these had always been the entirety of my life. Deep within me, there was always a voice calling me to seek something more mysterious, something that transcended reason and formula's magic. Since childhood, I have been filled with an endless longing for the magical world. Every time I opened a page of Harry Potter, the magical spells, flying broomsticks, and soaring potions seemed to pull me away from reality, leading me into a realm of wonder and excitement. Every time I imagined myself as a part of Hogwarts, I felt a sense of unexplainable thrill, as if that was where I truly belonged. But reality is always harsh. I have no magic, no flying broomstick, and no wizarding blood. I could only try again and again in the laboratory, attempting to create my own form of magic with chemical elements. And those lonely nights became my only companions. Then one day, at a random antique auction, my world was completely transformed. It was a cold winter afternoon, and I was wandering through a corner of the auction, surrounded by dusty antiques and forgotten treasures. As I approached an old wooden chest, an ancient book caught my eye. The cover had been eroded by time, making it impossible to identify its original appearance. But from the strange aura it emitted, I felt an irresistible pull. It was like a puzzle, an unsolved mystery, inviting me to uncover its secrets. Without hesitation, I picked up the book and began flipping through the pages filled with ancient text. As I delved deeper, I began to realize that this was not just an ordinary book. What it recorded was not the chemical formulas I was familiar with, but a profound formula for magic, a potion recipe infused with mysterious power, capable of curing diseases, enhancing magic, and even altering the very nature of substances. I began experimenting with the recipe in the book. Each time I mixed the ingredients, the changes in the chemical reactions were astonishing, as if each solution responded to the power in the book. I once thought it was all just my imagination, until that day. A brilliant light suddenly flashed, and my body was irresistibly drawn to a powerful force. Everything in the laboratory began to spin, as if being twisted by an invisible power. I couldn't control my body, and everything around me became blurry. When the light vanished, all the sounds faded into silence. I realized I was no longer in the laboratory. I blinked, and the scene around me left me stunned. I was standing in an ancient and magnificent castle, with torches on the walls and the stone floor glowing dimly. A few owls flew overhead, and faint traces of magical energy could be felt outside the window. My heart raced as I realized that I was no longer just an ordinary chemical researcher, but I had arrived at a place called Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Here, I would no longer be a scholar studying chemistry alone. I had entered a new world filled with mystery, fantasy, and adventure. Magic, chemistry, and even destiny seemed to intertwine, as if a new chapter was waiting for me to uncover. My adventure was just beginning. Under the dim light of the laboratory, I remained absorbed in a pile of chemical reagents and experimental notes. Although every detail of the chemical experiments captured my attention, there was always an empty corner deep within me, as if I were searching for something. Since I was young, I had a deep love for Harry Potter, a book that always filled me with longing. The magical world seemed both mysterious and distant, like something beyond reach. Even though I had buried myself in the world of chemistry, there was always a voice within me calling, magic. It seemed to be ever-present, silently existing, yet elusive, like a dream that could never be touched. One afternoon, on a weekend, I decided to temporarily put down my experiments and attend an antique auction. It wasn't that I had a particular interest in antiques, but rather an unexpected curiosity that led me there. The auction was bustling with activity, and the air was filled with the scent of old paper and wood. Amid the many antiques, an old book caught my eye. Its cover had faded, and the spine was covered with a thick layer of dust, as though it had endured the passage of time. I found myself walking toward the book, and when I touched its surface, I felt a strange energy surge through my fingertips. The sensation was unfamiliar, yet impossible to resist. I opened the book and saw a densely packed text. Although some of the words were blurred, certain magical formulas were still clearly visible. These were not ordinary potions. They contained complex chemical elements and mysterious symbols, as if blending chemistry and magic. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the contents of the book, my heartbeat quickening as though the book was speaking of a fate that could not be ignored. At that moment, without hesitation, I bid on the book at a price that was not cheap and took it home. Back in my laboratory, I eagerly began to flip through the pages of the magic book, filled with excitement and curiosity. Every potion recipe, every method for mixing magical solutions, seemed to correspond to the chemical principles I had learned. Perhaps it was fate, or perhaps the power in the book was guiding me. But I decided to follow the instructions in the book and attempt to prepare one of the potions. I carefully measured each chemical substance, my movements steady and focused. As the first ingredient dissolved into the flask, a faint light flickered at the mouth of the bottle. My brow furrowed, a sense of unease swelling inside me, but curiosity prevented me from stopping. Then, the second ingredient was added, and the liquid in the flask slowly became cloudy, while faint sparks of light flickered within it like fireflies. As the final mysterious ingredient was added, I heard a faint hiss from the flask, and suddenly, a brilliant light exploded, causing the air around me to become heavy and oppressive. My heart raced, and the world before me began to blur. The walls of the laboratory seemed to close in on me. I reached out desperately to grasp the instruments on the table, but they seemed to vanish before my eyes, like illusions. A sudden sensation of weightlessness overwhelmed me, and I felt dizzy as the entire laboratory spun. My consciousness began to fade, and my body uncontrollably floated upward. In that instant, I almost thought I was dreaming, but the following shock made it clear to me I was being pulled toward an unknown world. When the light faded, I opened my eyes wide and found that I was no longer standing in my familiar laboratory. Surrounding me was an ancient and mysterious campus scene, with the air filled with the fresh scent of earth and plants. In the distance, a tower reached high into the sky, and the buildings were ancient, like a floating, long-forgotten academy. I froze, looking around this unfamiliar world. The scene before me made me almost doubt if I was still dreaming. "You've finally arrived," a gentle voice broke the silence. I turned to see an elderly man with white hair, wearing robes, his eyes radiating depth and wisdom. His presence exuded an undeniable authority, as if the fate of this world had already been under his control. "Welcome to Hogwarts, young wizard," he said with a smile. "I am Dumbledore, the headmaster of Hogwarts. You came here through the magic book, didn't you?" I froze, overwhelmed by the shock that was almost impossible to express. Hogwarts? Could it be that I had truly entered the magical world that had once existed only in books? And the elderly man before me was the legendary figure I had heard so much about Dumbledore. "Yes, Professor," I answered with difficulty, my mind swirling with questions and excitement. "But how did I end up here? How is this possible?" Dumbledore's gaze was deep and kind, his smile carrying an incredible power. "Everything is arranged by fate. The magic book you received is not just an ordinary book. It is a bridge between the magical world and the real world. What you hold is not just the wisdom of chemistry, but the key to unlocking this adventure." I finally understood that my adventure was just beginning. That evening, Professor Dumbledore invited me into his office, which was filled with ancient books and mysterious objects. The air was thick with a quiet, contemplative atmosphere, and the moonlight from outside poured in, casting long, slender shadows across the room. Dumbledore stood beside a heavy wooden desk, which was covered with scrolls and seemingly ordinary objects, each holding a deeper symbolic meaning. His eyes gleamed with wisdom, as if he had already sensed a hidden force at work. "Please sit down, my young friend," Dumbledore said kindly. "There is much we need to discuss." I sat down, my heart filled with both unease and anticipation. Everything about this place was strange, yet enticing to me. I held the magical book in my hands, feeling its weight and mystery. The cover had been worn down by time, and the golden lettering at the corners had faded, but every time I opened it, I could almost hear a faint whisper, as if the book knew I was not here by mere chance. Dumbledore glanced at the book in my hands and nodded slightly. "That book, as you have discovered, is no ordinary magical text," he said thoughtfully. "It is a key in the world of magic, capable of unlocking some of the oldest mysteries." How? How can I understand these mysteries?" I asked, my voice filled with confusion and doubt. Although I had a certain expertise in chemistry, this was a completely different world. The laws, rules, and history of magic were alien to me, profound and unfathomable. Dumbledore's gaze was soft yet deep, and he smiled gently. "You are more important than you realize, young one. The knowledge you possess is not by chance. Magic and science, though they may seem opposing on the surface, can actually coexist. Magic is not just about spells. It is also a force, an energy, much like the chemistry you study. Your ability to combine science and magic represents a new possibility." His words left me somewhat disoriented, but there was also a subtle stirring within me. I had always believed that science and magic were two entirely different forces, one governed by logic and experiments, the other reliant on mysterious powers and inexplicable rules. But Dumbledore's words were like a warm breeze, gently clearing the fog in my mind. I began to realize that perhaps the opposition I perceived was merely because I had yet to touch upon their true essence. Can you sense the mysteries of the magical world? Dumbledore's voice once again broke the silence, gentle but powerful. The book in your hands is closely connected to an even older book, one known as the Book of Fate. It contains ancient prophecies that guide the course of the magical world's workings and development. The Book of Fate? I repeated in a whisper, filled with shock and curiosity. Fate, the word had always carried a sense of mystery and remoteness, as though it controlled everything, determining the lives and destinies of all. And now, Professor Dumbledore was telling me that this Book of Fate was somehow connected to the magical book I held in my hands. Dumbledore nodded, as if he had anticipated my reaction. The Book of Fate has been sought by many great wizards, yet its secrets have never been fully uncovered. Many believe that the Book of Fate can determine the future, but its true power lies hidden behind its words and prophecies. He paused, a complex emotion flashing across his eyes. And the secret of that book may very well be tied to your arrival. My heart raced, and I struggled to contain the excitement and questions swirling inside me. What can I do? How can I unravel the mysteries of this book? Dumbledore did not immediately respond. Instead, he slowly rose from his seat and walked to the window. He gazed out into the distance, as though lost in thought. You have already begun this journey, whether you wish it or not. The chemistry knowledge you possess, along with the magical book in your hands, are keys to this adventure. They guide you forward, and perhaps you are the one who can unlock the mystery of this book. His eyes grew deep and resolute. But you are not alone. You will face many challenges and tests. You will need the help of your friends, as well as your wisdom and courage. This is a task you will share with Harry, Hermione, and Ron. Harry them? I asked, slightly confused but filled with anticipation. When Dumbledore mentioned Harry and his friends, his tone was full of trust and affirmation. Their names were no longer distant symbols in my mind, but rather companions I was beginning to understand as part of my mission. Yes, Harry Potter, Hermione Granger, and Ron Weasley, Dumbledore nodded with a smile. You will join them in exploring the secrets of the Book of Fate. Each of you will play a role, and you, perhaps, will be the one who connects all the clues together. As I heard Dumbledore's words, an indescribable sense of responsibility surged within me. The Book of Fate, this mysterious and powerful presence, seemed to be inexorably tied to my destiny. And Harry, Hermione, and Ron would be the companions I would explore it with, facing the unknown challenges and uncovering the secrets hidden deep within the magical world. Dumbledore looked at me, his eyes full of warm expectation. You are no longer an observer. You are now a part of this adventure, and the bond you share with them will go beyond friendship. It will become a force that will change the magical world. I took a deep breath, feeling a determination like never before. No matter what lay ahead, no matter how difficult and winding the path may be, I was no longer afraid. I would join Harry and the others, unravel the mysteries of the ancient book of fate, explore the miraculous fusion of magic and science, and rewrite our story together. Since coming to Hogwarts, my world has undergone a dramatic transformation. Once, my mind was consumed with chemical formulas and molecular structures in the laboratory, but now, the mystery and allure of magic have captivated me. I quickly realized that magic and chemistry are not entirely opposites. In fact, they seem to share some underlying common principles. So, in my classes at Hogwarts, I began to integrate the knowledge I had gained in chemistry with magic, trying to brew the magical potions I had only seen in books before. Every time I stand at the lab table, I feel a rush of excitement, as if I've returned to the feeling I had when I first encountered chemistry. The difference is that here, I'm not just dealing with molecules and reaction formulas, but also considering the combination of spells and magical energy. The first few experiments were a bit chaotic, smoke billowing from jars, colors changing unpredictably, and a few times, the potions exploded unexpectedly, causing me to nearly jump out of my skin. But gradually, I began to understand the patterns, and brewing magical potions became easier and more intuitive. What surprised me most was that these magical potions were not only capable of healing diseases, they seemed to possess the power to change the very essence of materials. For instance, I brewed a potion that combined chemical elements and magical symbols, and it actually transformed a regular stone into metal. At that moment, I stood in the lab, staring at the stone that had turned silver, filled with an unprecedented sense of awe. The potential of the potion exceeded my imagination, as though it possessed a power that went beyond the laws of physics. And this was just the beginning. "Look at this. This potion is really something," Harry's voice sounded in my ear. I turned around and saw him, Hermione, and Ron standing by the lab table, their eyes filled with curiosity and admiration. Hermione stepped forward, examining my formula closely. She was always interested in new things, especially when science and magic intertwined. "You mean these potions can really change the essence of materials? This goes beyond our understanding of magic." I nodded, filled with pride, but also a bit of unease. After all, changing the essence of materials through magic was no small feat, and it could have unforeseen consequences. My thoughts were interrupted as Harry spoke again. "Are you ready? We have a new mission," Harry said, his face serious. "There have been strange occurrences in the Forbidden Forest. The professors have sent us to investigate." My heart skipped a beat. The Forbidden Forest, one of the most mysterious and dangerous places around Hogwarts. It's filled with unpredictable magical creatures and hidden dark forces. I had never imagined I would be part of an adventure there, but hearing Harry's words, a strange sense of courage stirred within me. "We should bring the potions you've brewed," Ron suggested, a glint of hope in his eyes. "Maybe these potions can help us deal with those strange phenomena." I took a deep breath and nodded in agreement. I began gathering my potion bottles and magical tools while Hermione checked our equipment, and Harry and Ron discussed the plan to enter the Forbidden Forest. We decided to approach from the forest's edge, trying to avoid provoking any of the mysterious creatures. As we entered the Forbidden Forest, The air grew increasingly gloomy, and the tall trees loomed overhead, blocking much of the sunlight. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and strange fragrances, as if the forest itself had some indescribable life force. Suddenly, a slight tremor broke the silence, and the ground began to tremble. My heart rate quickened. At that moment, we saw a creature we had never encountered before. Its body seemed to be made of intertwined vines and branches, and its eyes glowed with an eerie green light, as if silently watching us. "What is that?" Hermione whispered, clearly shocked by the creature's mystery. "I don't know," Harry frowned, "but we need to be careful." I quickly pulled out a bottle of blue potion from my bag, one I had brewed a few days ago, which had a calming effect. With a flick of my wrist, I threw the potion at the creature. It was immediately enveloped in a blue mist, and soon its movement slowed, eventually coming to a complete stop. We held our breath as it calmed down, losing all its aggressiveness. "That's amazing," Ron exclaimed. "Your potion is incredibly effective." We all sighed in relief and continued deeper into the forbidden forest. However, as we went further, the strange phenomena became more frequent. Some trees seemed to sway with our steps, and sometimes we could hear distant, low moaning sounds. I realized that all of this seemed to be linked to the Book of Destiny and the potions we had brewed. These potions weren't just simple medicines, they seemed to trigger some unknown force, perhaps even the revival of ancient, forgotten powers within the magical world. In the days that followed, we encountered bizarre creatures and phenomena nearly every day, and each time, I was able to solve the problems with the potions I had brewed. Each time this happened, I felt a deep sense of responsibility. As Professor Dumbledore had said, this adventure was not just a test for me, it was a new exploration, discovering how science and magic could merge and create new miracles. And these miracles might just change the fate of the entire magical world. That evening, the sky over Hogwarts had begun to darken, with deep purple clouds gradually covering the sky. Harry, Hermione, and I were sitting around the long table in the underground laboratory, with the ancient magic book lying in front of us. The cover of the book had yellowed with age, and the edges of the pages were no longer smooth, but the power contained within it far exceeded our understanding. "Look here," Hermione said, pointing to a line of text on the page, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "These formulas aren't just ordinary potions. They seem to contain some deeper force." I stared at the line of text, a sense of unease creeping over me. Hermione's instincts were always sharp, but her words made the air feel heavy and still. I instinctively gripped the pen in my hand, as if the book itself was warning us about an unspoken taboo. Harry was leaning against the table, his brow furrowed, his eyes filled with confusion and doubt. "We've brewed the potions from this book before, and their effects were powerful, but I've never felt anything like this," I whispered, a foreboding sense rising in my chest. Hermione flipped through a few more pages before stopping on one formula. It was for a potion of a deep, almost indescribable purple color. The final line of the recipe read, "Based on the power of darkness, awaken the forgotten curse." The chill in the words seemed to drop the temperature in the laboratory. I shuddered involuntarily. "What is this?" I asked, unable to stop myself, my eyes fixed on the line of text, feeling an intense pull of danger mixed with fascination. Hermione's face went pale as she looked at me, her voice trembling. "This isn't ordinary magic. This is dark magic, one that caused disasters in the ancient history of magic. The source of it is the forgotten curse we've heard about." I furrowed my brows, a terrifying thought flashing through my mind. "You mean this magic is coming back?" Harry stood up straighter, his face serious. "We need to investigate this. We can't let this magic spread." I took a deep breath, dimmed the lights in the lab, and began to analyze the recipe carefully, trying to trace the true source of this dark power. My chemistry background made me skilled at analyzing chemical components, but these magical ingredients left me feeling confused. Some of the symbols and spells in the book seemed to have subtle connections to chemical elements, as if there was some law from another dimension. Every time I tried to combine these elements with the essence of matter, fragments of broken images flashed in my mind, as if some force was preventing me from delving deeper. There's something wrong with the reactions of certain elements in this recipe, I finally realized. These solutions don't just change the essence of matter, they reawakening hidden forces. This power, it comes from an ancient curse, buried deep in the history of the magical world. Hermione fell silent for a moment, as if recalling something. I remember reading about this in magical history. The Forgotten Curse was cast by a powerful dark wizard who, thousands of years ago, tried to use dark magic to rule the magical world. But the curse was too powerful and led to uncontrollable consequences. Later, the wizard sealed all records of it to prevent the magic from resurfacing. But now, it seems like it's awakening. Harry's tone was tense, with a new urgency. "We have to stop it." I nodded, feeling even more certain that the potion recipes in this book were not simply ancient recipes for potions. They concealed a forgotten power, and we had accidentally triggered it. Every recipe, every spell in the book, seemed to be part of a larger conspiracy, a dark plan that was quietly unfolding. In the following days, the three of us stayed up almost constantly studying the magic book. I also applied my chemical analysis skills, trying to find a way to break the curse. But every time I tried to break down these magical ingredients using chemical methods, I hit barriers that seemed insurmountable. These elements weren't just magic, they seemed to oppose the very laws of nature. Once touched, they unleashed a chaos hidden deep within the magical world. Finally, after days of research, we discovered a shocking truth: the source of this dark magic was closely tied to the secrets of the Book of Destiny. The Book of Destiny was not just a historical record. It also contained powerful magic. That power had already begun to awaken and was resonating with the magic book we had in our hands. "We must find the Book of Destiny and stop it from fully awakening," Hermione said, her voice firm, though fear was evident in her eyes. "If it fully awakens, the magical world won't be able to handle it." Harry took a deep breath, his eyes staring into the distance. "Then we'll begin our mission. We don't have time to waste." I, too, felt an undeniable sense of urgency. The magical world before us seemed to be quietly slipping into an unavoidable disaster, and we had become the only ones capable of stopping it. We were no longer just students, we were warriors entrusted with a grand mission. Despite the anxiety and confusion in our hearts, we knew that the only way to save the magical world was to uncover the secrets of the Book of Destiny. That night, the air at Hogwarts was unusually cold, and the laboratory windows were covered with frost. We sat at a table piled with ancient texts and magical books, the flickering firelight casting shadows around us and illuminating our tense faces. Harry, Hermione, and I all felt an unexplainable sense of pressure, as if each page we turned in the magic book could cause some great disturbance buried deep within the magical world. "The Book of Destiny," Hermione murmured, as though those words had an irresistible pull. "So this is the true name of the book." We had been researching it for days, but every time we examined it, the fog in our minds seemed only to grow thicker. The text in the book was complex and difficult to understand, but each time we tried to unravel its secrets, we felt a faint tremor, as though some ancient force was awakening within the book. "I've never seen magic this powerful," I muttered, a sense of awe and astonishment washing over me. "These formulas, they seem to link to time and space. They're not just potions. They're the very foundation of magic, and they can even influence the future." Harry looked at me, confusion and unease flickering in his eyes. "You mean this book can control time?" I nodded, my eyes fixed on the swirling symbols and patterns on the page. They seemed to pulse, almost as if they were consciously interacting with us. Each time I tried to touch them, a subtle reaction occurred, as though the magic book was responding to us. Hermione turned a page and then stopped suddenly. This passage mentions several ancient wizarding families. Her voice trembled slightly. These families fought an endless war for the power of the Book of Destiny. I took a deep breath, filled with questions. These families, did they all know the power of this book? Hermione nodded. "Not only that, the book also mentions that the Book of Destiny was once controlled by several powerful wizards, and each of them left their mark. Every family's heir tried to gain more power from the book, which ultimately led to its disappearance." "Disappearance?" Harry frowned, seemingly unable to understand. "Then why is it in our hands now?" Hermione flipped to the last page of the book, her eyes filled with an indescribable fear. "The book says the power of the Book of Destiny is awakening, and it's trying to reshape the entire magical world. The families that once fought for it can no longer control it, and now its power is gradually returning, seeking new heirs." I felt a chill run down my spine. The Book of Destiny was not just a book. It was an ancient magical legacy, a powerful entity that could influence time, space, and the future. Worse still, its power was not merely magic, it was a mysterious force connected to the very laws of the universe. Professor Dumbledore once said that the power of this book was fought over by several families, and now it's starting to awaken, I said quietly, my mind in turmoil. "But why is it choosing us? We're just students. How could we?" At that moment, Professor Dumbledore appeared in the doorway of the laboratory. He didn't interrupt us, only quietly stood there, observing our progress. His gaze was deep and gentle, as if he had already seen everything. You've discovered the secret of the Book of Destiny, Professor Dumbledore said softly as he entered the room. However, you still don't know its true meaning. We all looked up, and Hermione eagerly asked, Professor, what exactly can this book's power do? Professor Dumbledore's eyes flickered with a complex emotion as he walked over to the table and slowly sat down. The Book of Destiny can do more than control time. It can reshape the future of the magical world. It allows wizards to change history, even alter the fate of the entire magical world. The families that fought for it once paid a terrible price in their pursuit of power. So what should we do now? Harry asked, a trace of anxiety in his voice. If it really awakens, can we stop it? Professor Dumbledore sighed deeply and said slowly, You must find the true resting place of the book. The power of the Book of Destiny is both a gift and a curse. It belongs to no one family and no one individual. Only by truly understanding its meaning can you decide its fate. My thoughts raced, a storm of questions surging through me. The Book of Destiny, its power was so vast that it almost surpassed all the magic we knew. What does its awakening mean? If it can truly change the future, can we also change past mistakes? Or, as Professor Dumbledore said, will its power become a curse, bringing unforeseen disasters? Hermione gently took my hand, her gaze resolute. We can't let this dark power fully awaken. No matter what, we must find the true resting place of the Book of Destiny. I nodded deeply, my heart filled with a mixture of fear and responsibility. We were not alone. Professor Dumbledore's guidance gave us some direction, but we knew that the path ahead was full of uncertainty and danger. The mystery of the Book of Destiny had not been solved, and we might be the only ones who could uncover its secrets. Then let's begin, I said to Harry and Hermione, a surge of determination rising within me. We have to stop this dark power, no matter the cost. As time passed, the existence of the Book of Destiny gradually began to attract more and more attention. At first, only we were aware of the mysterious power behind the book, but as we delved deeper into our research, the revival of dark forces became increasingly evident. I remember that day well. Just after finishing a potion class experiment, Harry and Hermione entered the laboratory with an expression of tension I hadn't seen in a long time. Behind them, the air seemed to carry an invisible pressure. I had never seen Harry so silent, and Hermione's brow was furrowed, clearly having discovered something unusual. "What's wrong?" I asked, my unease growing. Harry took a deep breath, a look of resolve flashing in his eyes. Dark wizards, followers of Voldemort, seemed to have started noticing the existence of the Book of Destiny. Hermione nodded, lightly tracing the surface of the desk with her fingers. "We found some clues in the library. It seems someone is searching for this book, and they've already noticed us." In that moment, my heart nearly stopped. The forces of darkness were closing in. The followers of Voldemort had been lurking in the shadows, constantly plotting destruction. Now their focus was on us. I couldn't help but imagine what terrible consequences would follow if these dark wizards gained control of the Book of Destiny. "We must protect the Book of Destiny," I said firmly. This book is crucial to the future of the entire magical world. We can't let it fall into evil hands. Harry clenched his fists, his eyes filled with familiar determination. We can't delay any longer. We have to stop them, no matter the cost. Hermione took a deep breath. We need to find all the clues and unravel the book's secrets. It's not just about the future of the magical world. It's also about you. She suddenly paused, a complex emotion flickering in her eyes. Your connection with the book runs deeper than we imagined. I couldn't help but furrow my brow as doubt rose within me once again. Hermione's words made me think of a possibility the Book of Destiny might not just concern the fate of the magical world. It might be deeply connected to my own fate. I didn't speak, but silently nodded. That lingering sense of foreboding, like a thin thread, quietly wrapped itself around my heart. In the days that followed, the atmosphere at Hogwarts became increasingly tense. We could feel the shadow of the dark forces gradually enveloping us. And at the same time, Harry, Hermione, and I became more focused on studying the Book of Destiny. We began to interpret every line, every symbol in the book. However, each time we uncovered part of its secrets, even more mysteries emerged. One night, Harry and I were walking alone down a dark corridor when suddenly, a powerful magical wave made the air feel heavy, almost suffocating. We exchanged a glance, both filled with an ominous premonition. Just as we reached a corner, we saw a figure ahead. The person wore a black cloak, their face blurred, and exuded a powerful dark aura. "You've finally arrived." The person's voice was deep and venomous, like a snake, cold and threatening. "Who are you?" Harry gripped his wand tightly, his voice full of caution. "I'm just one of the dark wizards." The person chuckled lightly. "The thing you're holding is exactly what we've been searching for, the Book of Destiny." My heart skipped a beat. All the clues finally came together. The Dark Wizard's purpose was now clear. They wanted to obtain the Book of Destiny and use it to carry out their evil plans. "You won't succeed," Harry said coldly, his eyes burning with determination. However, the Dark Wizard's eyes gleamed with a sly smile. "The power of this book is far beyond your imagination. Can you resist its temptation?" As soon as the words left his mouth, the Dark Wizard waved his wand, and a powerful wave of dark magic rushed toward us. Harry and I quickly retreated, raising our wands to cast defensive spells, but the oppressive force of the dark magic still made it hard to breathe. "Don't let it near the Book of Destiny," Harry shouted. We fought with all our might to fend off the Dark Wizard's attacks while desperately trying to think of a way to stop the revival of this dark power. Hermione arrived just in time, and her presence brought us a glimmer of hope. "We can't directly confront him. We need time." Hermione cast a protective spell while quickly flipping through the magical book. I found new clues. Behind the Book of Destiny is an ultimate secret. It's not just a magical heritage. It's a legacy, a force that governs the entire magical world's order. Suddenly, I remembered something Professor Dumbledore had said. The power of the Book of Destiny must not be monopolized by anyone. We had to find its true resting place. Only then could we stop the Dark Wizard's plot. As we struggled to resist the Dark Wizard, the Book of Destiny suddenly began to glow with a blinding light, illuminating the entire corridor. The dark wizard's face changed drastically, as if he saw something irresistible. His gaze was fixed on the book, greed gleaming in his eyes. But at that moment, I felt an unprecedented power burst from the Book of Destiny. That power surged through my body, putting me into a strange state. The Book of Destiny no longer belongs to either side, I whispered, and a clear vision flashed in my mind. The power of the Book of Destiny was not just about the future, its true secret was deeply intertwined with my bloodline. I had an inexplicable connection to this book, and this connection would ultimately decide the fate of the magical world. Just as I realized this, a strong magical wave cut through the darkness, and the power of the Book of Destiny fully awakened. It exploded into a brilliant light, pushing the dark wizard back. The Dark Forces conspiracy was temporarily thwarted, but the true meaning of the Book of Destiny still remained unsolved. We knew that the real trial was just beginning. As the shadow of the dark wizards gradually drew closer, I felt an increasingly strong sense of responsibility deep within me. The Book of Destiny, this mysterious magical tome, was not just a relic of the magical world. It seemed more like a warning bell, foretelling the potential disaster to come. The secrets within the book gradually unraveled, making me realize that my role was far more important than I had imagined. And this time, I had to use my wisdom to protect this world, protect my friends. The moment of the final battle had finally arrived. The night covered Hogwarts, and the air was thick with tension. Harry, Hermione, Ron, and I stood in the Great Hall of Hogwarts, not a trace of hesitation on our faces. The power of the Book of Destiny was awakening, and the dark wizards had finally stopped hiding. They were ready to launch their final assault. And I, holding the magical book in my hands, had a plan swirling in my mind. "We don't have much time," Hermione's voice broke the silence. Her brow furrowed, and there was a look of determination in her eyes. "We have to stop them, or this battle will never end." I took a deep breath, gazing at the magical book in my hands. The book still emitted a powerful glow, as if reminding me of the responsibility it carried. The past few months of exploration and study had made me realize that the power of this book far exceeded any ordinary magic. It was not just a magical heirloom. It contained an immense power capable of altering the very fabric of the world. "I know what to do," I finally said, my voice steady and resolute. Harry turned to look at me, a hint of confusion in his eyes, but mostly trust. "What's your plan?" I looked at him, my heart full of complex emotions. This young man carried the hope of the entire magical world, and perhaps I could do something for him, for all of us. My knowledge of chemistry can be combined with magical formulas. I believe if we combine magic and chemistry, we can create a potion that temporarily seals the power of the Book of Destiny. Hermione's eyes lit up as she grasped my idea. "You want to control the magic of the Book of Destiny with a potion?" I nodded. "Yes. This potion can temporarily suppress the power within the book, preventing it from being abused. But it requires a very precise formula. I have to use some of the special ingredients from the book and enhance the sealing effect using chemical methods." Ron looked a little nervous. "Are you sure you can do it? This is no small task." I smiled slightly, though I wasn't entirely sure myself, but I knew we had no choice. Time was running out, and this plan was the only way to stop the dark wizards. "I have to try," I said softly, my resolve growing stronger. Over the next few days, we hardly rested. The atmosphere at Hogwarts grew more tense, with the dark wizards' attacks becoming fiercer. Meanwhile, we prepared for an unusual battle within this ancient castle. In the library, Hermione was flipping through ancient magical books. Ron would occasionally remind us of dark wizards lurking on the campus, and I was in the lab, constantly adjusting the potion's formula. After several failed attempts, I finally concocted a near-perfect potion. It emitted a faint silver glow and flowed slowly, as if carrying some mysterious power. I knew that the success of this potion meant we now had a glimmer of hope. "This is our only chance," I said, looking at the potion, feeling a heaviness like never before. "If we can inject it into the Book of Destiny, we can temporarily seal its magic." However, fate seemed to have other plans. Just as we were preparing to act, the dark wizards had already begun to assemble, ready to launch their final assault. The leader of the dark wizards, the figure cloaked in black with their face hidden in shadow, led a group of followers to the gates of Hogwarts. Their eyes were filled with greed and resolve. "The Book of Destiny is already ours." The dark wizard's voice was low and filled with menace. "You cannot stop its power." Harry gripped his wand tightly, his eyes filled with no fear. "We won't let you succeed." At that moment, all magic erupted as the dark wizards launched a fierce attack. The air was thick with scorching magical energy. Harry, Hermione, Ron, and I fought back, magic and darkness intertwining, sparks flying. I knew that only through this intense battle would we find the ultimate solution. While the dark wizards were engaged with Harry and the others, I quietly made my way toward the Book of Destiny. Its light still shone brightly, but this time, I could feel its inner unease. It knew that it was about to be sealed. "Book of Destiny," I whispered, "you will no longer be a tool of darkness." I gently poured the potion between its pages. The potion, like a silver beam of light, quickly seeped into the book. With a sudden tremor, the light of the Book of Destiny instantly dimmed, and its powerful magic gradually faded away until it disappeared completely. The dark wizards froze. Their magic lost its direction in that instant. "Impossible!" The leader of the dark wizards yelled in anger, but it was too late to reverse the situation. The sealing of the Book of Destiny was successful. The dark wizard's plot was shattered, and peace finally returned to Hogwarts. We had successfully protected the future of the magical world, but the true secret of the Book of Destiny remained unsolved. It was not just a magical heirloom. It was a warning for the future. Every power should be treated with caution, and we, as guardians of magic, must always remember that. On that night, the stars over Hogwarts were exceptionally bright. We stood atop the ancient castle, looking into the distance, our hearts filled with an unspoken sense of responsibility. The story of the Book of Destiny was far from over. After the decisive battle, the sky over Hogwarts grew calm once again. The forces of magic and darkness intertwined and finally ended in our victory. However, the morning after our triumph did not signal the return of complete peace. On the contrary, it marked a new beginning for the magical world, and for me personally. After some time spent repairing and organizing, Harry, Hermione, Ron, and I still maintained close ties. We often gathered to discuss unresolved mysteries or simply shared some warm moments amid our busy daily lives. Hogwarts remained our warmest home, and my adventures had finally found a new direction. One day, Professor Dumbledore came to find me, his eyes filled with both appreciation and anticipation. At the time, I was in the laboratory, working on a new potion recipe, my mind buzzing with the possibilities of combining chemistry and magic. When I saw him enter, my heart skipped a beat. Professor Dumbledore was not one to offer praise easily, but today, there was something different in his expression. "You have done exceptionally well, young professor," Dumbledore said softly, his voice carrying an indescribable warmth. "Not only have you uncovered the secrets of the Book of Fate, but you've also shown us the immense potential of blending magic with science. Hogwarts needs you, and the magical world needs you." I was shaken by his words. They were heavier than any honor or award. To me, the magical world was no longer a distant dream, but a responsibility I had taken on. This responsibility stemmed from my reverence for magic and from my desire to explore the unknown. "You mean?" I swallowed and tried to keep my voice steady. Dumbledore gave a small smile. "I hope you will join the Hogwarts faculty, teaching courses that combine magic with chemistry, and share your knowledge with the young witches and wizards eager to learn. You have the wisdom and ability to forge a new path and become a pioneer in magical education." His words filled me with both surprise and gratitude. A professor position at Hogwarts was never easy to obtain, especially with someone like Dumbledore personally recommending me. I knew this was not just recognition for my past efforts, but a great expectation for my future potential. I looked up at Dumbledore, and in his eyes, I saw a profound gleam, as if he knew my answer had already formed in my heart. "I am willing," I said, my voice calm, but inside, I was overcome with excitement. From that day forward, I became a professor of magic and chemistry at Hogwarts. My classroom was filled with students full of curiosity and enthusiasm, eager to understand the power of combining science and magic. As the creator of this new course, I felt a deep sense of responsibility. I began teaching them how to brew potions that could enhance magical effects, how to use chemical principles to explain magical phenomena, and even how to create new magical substances in the laboratory. However, I never forgot my past adventures. While the secrets of the Book of Fate had been revealed, the darkness in the magical world still lurked. Each lesson I taught was an exploration into both magic and science. I continued to team up with Harry, Hermione, and Ron to solve the increasingly complex problems at Hogwarts, facing new challenges and dangers, sometimes even threats from mysterious forces. Each time, we stood together, and our friendship grew stronger. Hermione was still the brilliant, determined friend who never gave up. When researching magical texts, she left no detail overlooked and often provided us with crucial clues at key moments. Together, we delved into the fusion of magic and chemistry, and she even proposed groundbreaking theories that filled me with confidence for the future. Ron remained our team's steadfast pillar. While he didn't possess Hermione's bookish wisdom, he had unmatched courage and selfless loyalty. Whenever danger approached, he was always the first to step forward, protecting each of us. Though occasionally awkward, his loyalty and bravery were irreplaceable. Harry, as our leader, remained the brave young man who would sacrifice anything to protect us all. After all the adventures and pain he had endured, his eyes still shone with an unwavering dedication to justice and truth. And I began to understand that Harry's burden far exceeded personal grudges and hatred. His heart was always filled with hope and belief in the future of the magical world. As time passed, my days at Hogwarts became increasingly fulfilling. My courses were warmly received by the students, and many young witches and wizards developed a strong interest in the fusion of magic and chemistry. I often saw them in the laboratory, their eyes sparkling with curiosity about the unknown, bravely exploring the future that belonged to them. However, as Dumbledore had said, the magical world was never without challenges. I knew my adventures had not come to an end. New mysteries were constantly arising, new dark forces were quietly emerging, and the power of the Book of Fate seemed to have not entirely disappeared. Whenever the night grew still, I would sit alone in the laboratory, pondering the unresolved secrets. There was always an invisible pressure in my heart. But I no longer felt alone, because I knew that Harry, Hermione, and Ron were always by my side. Our adventure was far from over. The halls of Hogwarts remained the stage where we would continue to explore and grow, and the future of the magical world still awaited us to write its story. If you also enjoy the Harry Potter series, feel free to leave a comment and let me know which character or story from the wizarding world you love the most. Of course, since you're already fast asleep, no comment is the best comment.